Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. The Boren Awards team is so excited to welcome you all to the second session of our recurring Boren Alumni Ambassador series, Straight from the Source. We hope with this series that you learn a little bit more about what it means to be a Boren recipient and that our lovely Boren Alumni Ambassadors inspire you all to hit submit on your applications. My name is Bailey Preston. I'm on the Boren Outreach team. I was also a 2020 Boren Flagship Scholar to Brazil. So I'm very happy to be here with you all tonight as we shine a light on our awesome Boren Alumni Ambassadors, Colin Trissel and Sarkis Zobian. There's no better group of folks than our Boren Alumni Ambassadors to give you a whole holistic view of every step of the process and the perks that come with being a Boren recipient. So, Colin, Sarkis, thank you guys so much for being with us here today. We really appreciate it. And I also want to say thank you to everyone attending. We're so excited to see your interest in Boren and hopefully applying. And so we hope that this webinar sheds some more light on the entire process of being a Boren recipient. Like I mentioned, today's session is going to be split in half. We'll use the first 30 minutes for some pre-prepared questions and then the last 30 minutes for Q&A. Please feel free to either use the Q&A function or the chat. But we're also kind of a small group, so feel free to just simply raise your hand and I'll call on you and you can unmute and ask your question if that's something you're comfortable with. So without further ado, let's get started. Sarkis, Colin, again, thank you both so much for being here. And I'm going to ask you just to kind of acquaint us all. Can you tell us your name, the year you were awarded, the language you went to, the language you went to, the language you learned, the country you went to, and your current federal position? And we'll start with you, Sarkis.
Okay, fantastic. Bailey, thank you very much. And it's nice to see everybody here. Looking forward to chatting with you a little bit more later. My name is Sarkis Zobian, and I had a little bit of a strange Boren path. I was awarded initially in 2021 to learn Kazakh in Kazakhstan, and some complications with the pandemic had me defer that and eventually give it up. And then I came back, applied to learn Russian, and ended up getting that. Unfortunately, my location was going to be in Ukraine, and that was awarded just before February 2022. So I changed, and I ended up going to Kazakhstan to study Russian there. And currently, I am a federal employee at the U.S. Department of War in Washington, D.C. I'm working at the National Defense University's capstone program, where I still am this evening.
Amazing. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Colin Trissel. I was a Boren Scholar in 2022. I was a part of the former Turkish Flagship Language Initiative Program, or more commonly known as TURFLY. I'm currently based in the DC area as a federal employee, working for the DOW at the Defense Security Cooperation Agency, more commonly known as DSCA.
Thanks, Colin. So, Colin, we're going to start with you for the next question. Why did you apply to Boren specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So during my final semester in college, I wanted to do an overseas program focusing specifically on language. At that point, I actually didn't have any Turkish foundation language-wise at all. So I was really looking for an intensive language program that would allow me to, number one, learn a critical language, but also to have the opportunity to be able to study and live abroad in a location that I didn't have too much familiarity aside of the academic realm, and fully immerse myself in the language and the culture for professional and personal reasons after.
Amazing. Thanks, Colin. Sarkis, same question.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be able to like fluently speak another language, and languages in general have been a passion. So Boren afforded not only a lot of space to kind of do that and to study intensely, which is something that you don't always get a lot of, like just a single semester in a university class is not usually enough to learn a language. The immersion was such an important component of it. And alongside of that, the room to do research and to have a relevant national security question was also something that was like just extremely important about Boren, so that it had not only a language and cultural component, but a really a solid academic part to it as well. And that makes it a great program.
Great. So considering kind of going off script here, but considering that you both kind of had like this pre-exposure somewhat to some degree to your languages and your regions, how did you find out about Boren? Like who told you about Boren or how did you come across Boren? And Sarkis, we'll start with you.
Yeah, of course. Um, so when I applied to Boren, I was in a master's program at American University, and this was mid-pandemic, like pretty early on. So everything had gone online, and just at one of these online sessions, it was like, here are some things that you can look forward to in the future when things are a little more active and moving again. And I was lucky enough that I was at American University. If anybody is there, I was at American University School of International Service. So they were really good about looking outside at ways that you can interact with the wider world and programs like the Boring. So I was lucky in that way.
Amazing. Thank you. Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually, during one of my sessions with one of my professors, we were just kind of discussing different types of federal programs that are available to apply to. And I uh, remember having a conversation with her, bringing up the conversation of studying abroad. And she said, well, she knew my interest in learning languages and using that application post-grad. And she recommended looking into the Boren Scholarship. And she knew that I had an interest in the South Caucasus and Turkey. And she was the one who kind of directed me towards the Turfly program. And I applied and been going through it ever since.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for providing a little bit more context about that. I think we've kind of touched on my next question about how you chose your country and language. So I'm going to skip to our next question, which is how was your language slash overseas location relevant to U.S. national security? And what was your process for writing the national security essay? And Colin, we'll start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So my my program was a little bit unique in the fact that we were learning Turkish in Azerbaijan. So at least when I had to uh, look at the national security essay, I had to look at how kind of Turkey fit into the global security landscape, especially as a NATO ally. So I remember when I was going through the thought process of writing the essay itself, I looked at the war that was the civil war that was happening in Syria, the United States involvement, as well as Turkey's involvement in that conflict, but also looking at the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict that was going on in Azerbaijan at the same time, and the degree of Turkish influence that was occurring throughout that conflict. So, at least from a national security standpoint, I kind of looked at the conflicts in the region that were going on, how the United States fit in, and how I was able to use Turkish and Azerbaijani, the language component, and how that fit into a career in federal service using those skills to better understand the conflict in the United States position.
Great. Thank you. Sarkis?
Yeah. So saying that Ukraine is important to U.S. national security in some kind of ways, a little bit of a tautology at this point with how everything has been going over the last few years. Um, but what I originally wanted to look at is not just what would happen in Ukraine, but how it would ripple into our allies and partners in Europe and the wider region. So my original essay was a little bit toward food and agricultural security, as well as some different kinds of national resources and critical minerals, and what might happen if a conflict or if something kind of came to a head over those. Um, so it was using kind of a less looked at the time aspect of what could happen in conflict as a way to show that while the U.S. at this time might not have a critical stake in this, the people that we support and rely on and work with do as well, and that has immense ramifications on us. And when looking at Kazakhstan, it was a little bit of the same thing when pivoting there.
Amazing. Thank you both. I think with both of you, perspectives, we're kind of seeing you can see a variation in what people talk about in their national security essays. So don't feel pressure to talk about what you think we want you guys to talk about. You can talk about almost anything. Okay, next question. And we'll start with you, Sarkis, for this one as well. How has Bourne impacted your academic, personal, and professional life?
So Boring gave me a lot in regard to all of these three things. It was especially relevant academically because a lot of the work I was doing in my master's program as a Boren Fellow was kind of reflected. I had opportunities to learn about, to interview, to discuss things with people that I never would have been able to otherwise, and support kind of the strong academic work I was doing at AU with that. At the same time, I think I'm not sure how unique American is in regard to this, but they do have a language component for their international service degree. So I had to pass a pretty high level language test, and I don't think I would have done that without the kind of study that I got to do over Boren. I got to meet a lot of great people, not only in the program, but afterwards as well. I mentioned to people in some situations, I was a Boren, and occasionally I'll get like, what was your country? I was a Boren too. And we get to discuss that. So it's a great icebreaker in that regard. And professionally, the Boren really helps with getting into the federal government. I am still at work, and so you can kind of see what the Boren has given me professionally, which has been great.
Amazing. Thank you, Colin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I applied for Boren my final semester in college. So it was really kind of a jumping start point for me to go from university study to my Boren program into a completely new language and region. Obviously, I studied just the academic side of it, so to actually get to live it and get more insight into the region and the language itself was super rewarding. Personally, professionally, I actually found my current position through the Boren job portal. Actually, my person that was a part of my Boren program, she actually referred me to apply to this specific position because she knew it was opening up on the job board. So obviously I've been here for almost 2 years now, and I really enjoy what I do so far. So I would have never been able to have the opportunity to do this position without my Boren scholarship. And then at least on the personal aspect, I still keep up with a lot of my friends who I participated in the Turfley program with. I still keep up with them to this day. And even just living in the DC area, I run into other Boren scholars and fellows who I did my summer program in Wisconsin-Madison with on a pretty regular basis. So it's really a great program for connecting you with like-minded individuals who also have a passion for language and just national security interests. And it really puts you on a great path for getting more in depth into an area and a language, and kind of jumpstarting that passion already.
Wonderful to hear that Boren had an impact and continues to have an impact. Okay, Colin, next question. And this is only if it's different from where you currently work. So where did you fulfill your service? And if it's the same place, totally fine. But what was your experience like? Like, could you talk more about it? I know you mentioned the job board and things like that, but how what else did you kind of go through prior to being referred to that position?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started out my career in DC in the think tank world. I worked at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy. I actually worked on their Turkish research program, or TRP. So that was kind of my introduction into the DC policy and like think tank world. So in that particular position, I was using my Turkish language a lot more than my current position. But while I was there, I actually was working on drone policy and the Turkish defense industry. So when I was applying for federal jobs, looking to fulfill my service requirement, or I guess a former colleague of mine knew that I was interested in focusing on the UCOM area where Turkey falls into. And she referred me to the Boren job portal where they posted the position for just the Boren scholars. And then through that, at least through my current position, it's really been a good introduction to this world of security cooperation, which is not an area that I was super familiar with before. But it was really through the Boren portal and speaking with individuals who have gone through the federal hiring process, which, as you guys will learn, is a very long-winded process. But once you get through it, it's extremely rewarding, and it's opened up some great opportunities after the fact through this position over the last 2 years as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Colin. Sarkis, same question. So where did you fulfill your service? And what was your experience like searching for federal employment?
Of course. So I began my federal service at National Defense University pretty soon after coming back from Kazakhstan. I was hired into the International Student Management Office, which works with partner and allied officers who are coming to DC to study at the National Defense University. I really liked their mission. I really liked what they were doing, and I had previously worked as a school teacher. So I thought working at a university, that's kind of like being a teacher. It's not at all. There are a lot of differences. Um, some of them difficult, most of them really fantastic. Um, but after about 6 months there, this position at Capstone came open at National Defense University. So I transitioned out of ISMO, the international office, um, over to here and carried out the rest of my service here. And the mission is very similar to help military officers further their education. And that is what I really liked about it. I liked being able to get this kind of education, to get these experiences, and then to use them to help shape what others are doing. Even if they're a little older and much more high ranking than I am, what I know can really kind of affect what they learn in a positive way.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarkis. So my next question, to the degree that you can share, what does your agency do? And then I'm going to combine the next question with that, which is, what does a typical workday look like? And what do you like most about your job as a public servant? And we'll start with you, Sarkis, for this one.
Yeah, so I am now the Deputy Director of Operations at National Defense University Capstone. And what we are is an educational program for military officers. Um, what we do is train these high-level military officers. And what the National Defense University does as a whole is pretty much that same thing. We are one university with 5 component colleges that handle all kinds of different subjects. We have, for example, one college that is more of a strategic leadership and planning kind of school that helps people formulate long-term plans, whether they be military or economic or diplomatic. We have one that's kind of dedicated to industry and that sort of thing. But where I am now, there is kind of a little bit of a military Department of War um, joke or saying about doing other duties as assigned. And I am lucky that I get to do so many different things. So one day I might be just assisting people doing paperwork, and another day I might be calling embassies and getting to use my languages and making sure people get to go where they are supposed to go, along with just a lot of other things.
Thanks, Sarkis. Colin?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, I work as a division coordinator at the DSCA, or the Defense Security Cooperation Agency. And so kind of a gist of what we do as an agency. So we're a part of what's called the SC Enterprise, or the Security Cooperation Enterprise. And our main kind of function as an agency is we are kind of the endpoint between the US government and how they work with foreign militaries and governments to strengthen our existing alliances with them, provide them with partner capabilities, and to support also US national security objectives via different security cooperation tools. And so, at least in my division, I focus primarily on the European division, but I also fill in part-time in some of the other divisions as well. So in terms of a day-to-day, it really changes. At least in my role in particular, I work mostly with the country directors. And so really my job is the kind of liaison between the leadership and the country portfolio analysts, and helping them with ad hoc taskers, whether that means helping set up different read aheads for meetings that we have with foreign leaders who are visiting the agency, or if that means working through our various bilateral engagements, assisting with minutes or any form of preparations for these meetings. And lastly, just making sure that the internal agency functions, routine meetings, discussions between our agency and the different combatant commands, as well as the other branches of the military services, as well as other USG agencies throughout the SC enterprise. So yeah, I would say that a lot of my job is very ad hoc. I mean, obviously we have our routine meetings, our routine schedule of things that we have to accomplish for the weeks. But there's a lot of adaptability and on the fly type of engagements that will just show up on the spot or just kind of come out of nowhere. And I'm kind of there to help liaison, making sure these meetings go well, but also represent the United States in the best possible way that I can.
Amazing. Thank you, Colin. It's amazing to see that you both are kind of working in similar-ish areas, though your focus is a little bit different. My last question for you both, and Colin, we'll start with you for this one. Do you have any advice for applicants or awardees regarding any part of the boring process? So that could be from applying to actually going abroad to looking for federal employment. Any advice in any of those areas?
Yeah, I would say the big thing, especially if you're looking to do a board program, is just to be adaptable. I think that's the main takeaway that I was able to achieve, at least for my board program, and especially during the application process. Communicate the adaptability aspects and the willingness that you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation of intensively studying a language in a region that you might not be so familiar with, and willing to be able to take on that challenge, but also to embrace it as well. I think one of the most rewarding things of being a Boren scholar at that time was, I was placed in a part of the world that I'd only read about. I'd never really spent a lot of time there. And by the time that my Boren program was over, I felt completely comfortable navigating the city, having conversations with locals, and just really getting the unique opportunity to embrace that part of my studies, but also keeping up those personal connections as well post program. And then lastly, in terms of just the application process, obviously it's very tricky, but the main thing with it is just to be attentive, make sure that all your applications that you're going through with, make sure you add as much detail that you can, and just to be patient. It's a long process. It can be long and aggravating, but just know it's super rewarding at the end of the day. And once you finally cross the finish line, the long wait and the kind of uncertainty at times when you're waiting for these long lead times on your application, they suddenly go away. So that's the best advice I can give on it.
Thanks, Colin. Sarkis?
I think Colin already said it perfectly. I think adaptability is probably number one. So I will offer a tentative number two, which I think is being innovative and kind of searching for the unexpected. So when preparing for your application and your essay and all of these kinds of things, I mean, what I did were not typical national security issues. Nobody might immediately think of agriculture and see that as a national security issue, which reflects on the United States. And when I was doing it for Kazakhstan, I had happened to be like reading a bunch of Kazakh books that were published in English, and they were showing movies and posting them on YouTube in English. And why were they doing that? We're Americans, we don't care about like movies from Kazakhstan. But it kind of showed a shifting of their foreign policy to like looking outwards. And what does that mean if a country is trying to reach out these tendrils and say like, hey, this is a diplomatic initiative that you should be paying attention to. So look at these different things, extrapolate kind of what they might mean, and use those to make kind of innovative claims or predictions, and see what you can do with that. At the same time, just look for unexpected things. When I went to Almaty, Kazakhstan, I did not expect some of the expat community and some of the U.S. Entities and people working there that ended up being on the ground once I got there. There are a lot of great opportunities for internships and meeting people that you might end up meeting when you come back home. So prep yourself to just look for them ahead of time and be open to them when you are there.
All great, awesome sound advice. Thank you so much, Colin and Sarkis. That concludes the first half of our session. I'm going to close this out now. So thank you both again for sharing your insight and experiences. I say it all the time, but we quite literally wouldn't be able to do this without you. And thank you to all of our attendees as well for tuning in and joining us today, or if you're viewing this recording. And I have a few reminders before we close out. The first is that our alumni ambassadors are available to chat with you. If you're interested, just email the Boren team at boren@iieus.org and we'll help facilitate contact. And then the second is that the Boren application deadlines are fast approaching. And so just plugging here that all fellows, aka graduate students, should have your application submitted by January 21st, 2026. And all scholars, aka undergrad students, should have your application submitted by January 28th, 2026. And if you happen to have any questions that come up before the deadline, again, you can just reach out to the Boren team at boren@iieus.org and we'll be happy to help. But thank you and have a good night. All right.